Hello, everybody. Here we are. We are talking about what's money got to do with wealth and poverty. So today what we wanted to do is look at some of the limiting beliefs, have a conversation about money, wealth, and poverty. And what we wanted to do is look at the beliefs that unwittingly hold people hostage in their life and the viewpoint of metaphysical science that unlocks the freedom that is available. So that's what we want to do. So welcome, Betty.
Welcome.
Cool. All right. So basically what we were looking at, there's all kinds of things around money, all kinds of, wealth and poverty and beliefs about all of it. And when your excuse is, well, I can't do XYZ because I don't have the money. If we are living in an abundant world and all of that kind of thing, then what would that limit be? What would have the source of that statement be present? So what I wanted to look at with Betty was kind of what is this whole thing about money and what is real wealth and poverty? What does that have to do with it? Because it seems like money is the God in our world. People, if you have a lot of it, you're powerful. You can, pretty much, have better attorneys. If you're ever in court, you probably will, be found not guilty, all that. Whereas if you're poverty stricken, you don't have any of that. You have a public defender. You're not going to, you know what I mean? So there's all these different implications of all this stuff. And I was like, but what about metaphysical science? What does science have to say about any of this stuff that is actually things we deal with in our life? Because that's what has it be relevant. So any rate, so that's what prompted the conversation about this. And I know that in an earlier episode, we did look at Money and the Meaning of Life by Jacob Needleman. So that will be another episode you might want to go back and look at on our YouTube channel and check that out. So because I know we did that and I don't know exactly when. I haven't had time to go look. But at any rate, that's what we're going to talk about. So welcome, Betty.
Hi.
All right. So let's just jump in here. So when we look at money and wealth and poverty, what are some of the things? What do you want to say about it, first of all? And then we can get into Q&A. And by the way, if any of you have any questions or want to post anything, please put it in your comments box and we will take it up here. So we'll see them come in. So feel free to do that as well and ask questions and participate. So go ahead, Betty.
Yeah. Well, the discussion of money is many-sided, and it seems to be a dominant feature in everyday living. How much money can I earn at this job? Did I take an education at college that would get me a good job with good pay so I could afford to live the way I want to live? All that kind of thing. Metaphysical science, first of all, would look at money as the symbol of abundance. Now, the symbol is not the thing. The abundance is something that is a characteristic of being. And so the symbol shows up in the language of money. And when we don't have enough of it, we get all concerned thinking that our human doing every day, what I do, makes a difference in my availability of money to meet all my needs and all that sort of thing. So, well, let me just start with an example. I had a call. There was a need for more income to afford to live in an apartment that seemed suitable. And so the individual who called me was talking about it and said, I'm not sure that I can afford to live there. And so this is similar also. I've heard Margaret Laird talk about this same subject on this. But anyway, this is all in who you're being what you include as part of your way of living every day. How do you see yourself? It gets a little bit complicated, but let me tell this simple story and then maybe we'll go from there. Anyway, when I got the call, I said, man is the expression of God's being. So man fundamentally is always well equipped, well taken care of. He's the expression of all the power there is. So let's just let that rest for a minute. And let's let the idea that your income at the moment doesn't seem sufficient for this apartment, just let that be for a while, like put it on the shelf. And let's just see, could I possibly be interested in or deprived of something that would provide me with greater comfort, greater joy, ease of living? No, why should I give that up? And I think, well, if we live and move and have being mentally, then what's the idea about money? The idea is that it would help pay for my apartment. Okay, then could that be lacking if that apartment is for me? You see, the idea of living in the apartment includes everything it takes to have that apartment work out. So the money's there. It's whether or not I can step into it. And the way I step into it is to let go of the limiting beliefs I've got about who I am and what I've got to work with and how it's all going to figure itself out. When I leave all that alone, just leave it alone. Give up on trying to figure it out. And let's just see that man is abundantly supplied all the time. And he says, well, I have to go back tomorrow and sign up for it if I want it because it'll be gone. I said, okay, let's just take one step at a time. So he said, okay. And he hung up. And the next morning he got up and he decided that he would go over and take another look at the apartment. And he did. And it was just exactly what he wanted. So the rental agent said, well, what we need is a deposit. And he said, all right. So he gave him a deposit and he went home. And he was really good about not fussing about it. He did just step one, step two, and then he went home, and that's the way it stood. And he called me up and he said, okay, I put a deposit on it. And I said, good. And he says, I get to move in 2 weeks. And I said, okay. So the long story goes on, but in 2 weeks' time, what had occurred for him was that he had some money that he was saving for something else that was actually available to him. And he said, well, I can use some of that. And I said, okay. So he did. And he said, but when I get down here to 6 months away, I'm going to need some money in there. I said, well, let's just see how that shows up. There'll be an opportunity for that to show up just fine. And he really began to let go of worrying about it all. And he did move into the apartment. He was fine. And as time went on, there was an opportunity for him to do a part-time job. This is a retired individual. So he did the part-time job, and it was more than he needed for his monthly budget. So he began to relax and see that out of who he was being and willing to listen, willing to let go of all of his concerns and be willing to see that he should be abundantly taken care of, that willingness took him a long ways. He found that he could well afford to be where he was. All of his other needs were met because the part-time job came through, and it was something that actually he enjoyed doing. And it introduced him to people in the community that he would have had no way to meet otherwise. So it turned out that one step at a time worked out a nice venue of living for him, a nice community, a nice apartment, the ability to take care of it and to afford it.
Right. So what I hear in what you said is willingness, one step at a time. You don't have to have all the answers right up front.
Right.
So willingness, one step at a time, being willing to step into that and then see how things unfolded. And it unfolded in a way he never could have thought something like that would unfold.
Right.
Right. So then we look at money being just fine. Wealth. Well, look at the wealth surrounding his experience of living. Friends, job, community, the apartment that he was happy with, so whatever
All
your
of that was
picture,
wealth.
yeah, your picture of wealth. Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying is wealth is so much more than just dollars and cents. It's so much more than just the money. There's a whole thing about wealth.
Yes, there was an abundant community that opened up for him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the poverty, if you want to look at poverty, is it just poverty of thought? Poverty of belief? What is it that would hold someone stuck in the I can't, it didn't work? What would have that would be fixed beliefs, fixed ideas about how it needs to look? Would it be, or, how do you explain that side of the equation? Someone being
poverty of freedom, for one thing.
Pardon me?
It's poverty of freedom.
Sure. Yeah.
It is metaphysical science would have you look at being, your being. And as long as you have your being lodged in the picture that you have of yourself, you will be limited.
Yeah.
Because the two-legged animal is your piece to play the game of living in human situations, but it is not who you are. The thing you see in the mirror is the piece you have to play the game, but the being that you are has that thing in the mirror show up.
Yeah.
If I can put it that way. So there is a being that is actually the expression of God's being, of divine being, whole, perfect, complete. That is present every time you show up and whenever you show up and wherever you show up. That's who you are, and how you play the game and the car you drive, the clothes you wear and all that stuff. That's just window dressing. That's game playing.
Right.
But there is a divinity shaping our ends. And when you depend on that, you got something to work with.
Okay, very good. All right. Well, we've got some quotes here, some things. So in Mind is the Athlete, on page 91, you start out saying, when I understood that I lived my others as aspects of my own self-perception, I was willing to allow them to do their thing their way. My sole responsibility was to live all of my world as my own self-discovering.
Yep.
So it's whatever shows up is my own self-discovering, however that looks, whether I like it or I don't like it, whether it looks like wealth or poverty or whatever, a lot of money or no money, abundance or lack. My sole responsibility is to live my world as, so this is who I think I am, or this is my self discovering, unfolding for my own growth and development.
The fact of the matter is, when you look around you, this is the best thing I know about myself, because we always live up to the highest level that we have of self-perception.
Okay.
So self-discovering is an ongoing lifetime event.
Right.
Human living. It's a laboratory for self-discovering, discovering who you are at a level different than looking at the thing you see in the mirror. Okay.
Yeah. All right. And then you also say on page 93 in Mind is the Athlete, The belief that existence actually originates in language constitutes the illusion of objective life outside the realm of mind or consciousness.
Yep.
And there's another part there, but before we go to that part, so the belief that existence, so if you think money is somehow over there and you either have it or you don't have it, you basically are inside the belief that originates in language, constituting the illusion of objective life.
Yep.
Okay.
And the belief that this two-legged thing is what's living that life.
Right. Right.
Instead of playing the game.
Right.
The
So again, I
living
go
life
back
is your
to,
being.
yeah, so I go back to willingness, one step at a time, being open. Why not? So you don't defeat yourself before you start.
Willingness to explore
Okay.
the divine being that's present,
Yeah.
having me look like Betty.
Right.
Yep.
Okay. So let's read the whole thing and I'll put the other part up. I just wanted to go through that first part. The belief that existence actually originates in language constitutes the illusion of objective life outside the realm of mind or consciousness and beguiles human beings into relying on what their senses report.
Yep.
Which would be the seen, heard, and felt phenomena.
Right.
Like all my circumstances, what's going on around me.
What someone said to me.
Right. Okay. All right. And then also on page 93, you say daily human living in its most fundamental state is a laboratory that permits inquiry into challenges of what, when, where posed by the language phenomenon.
Yep.
So say more about that.
Well, fundamentally, that's exactly what this Betty and the world she walks through is for me. It's a laboratory in which I get to discover the divinity that has me occur.
Right.
And living that consciously allows great freedom for the Betty thing to go do, be, have, whatever.
Excellent. Okay. Good. Now, are there any questions or comments? Please type them into your question box. We'd love to have some of that. And we are sponsored by the Institute of Metaphysical Science. And you can go to the website and check out some of the ways you can participate and all of that sort of thing. That's all right out at scientificmetaphysics.org. Okay, so Christian Science Re-Explored by Margaret Laird says, with science for your vision, you will recognize that whatever you do for the preservation of your health, wealth, and happiness is not your doing, but is health, wealth, and happiness unfolding as yourself. So it's
capital health, capital wealth, capital happiness.
Right. Is unfolding as yourself. So it's not Kim's doing or Betty's doing. It's just being, showing up.
Including all of that.
Uh-huh. Okay.
It's not something that gets added to you, in other words. It's something you are,
right,
rather than something you have.
Right. Okay. And then in Christian Science Re-Explored, Margaret Laird also says, when you're ready to let the ego evolve a new ego image, unconcerned with goals, with effects, success and failure, sickness and health, you may be sure health, wealth, and happiness will be your lot.
Yep.
So it's when you let go, when you stop trying to figure it out, move the pieces around in your life that make it all look like it's just going to work. All of that. If you rely on the moving of the pieces, I should say, if you think that that's what's going to shift it.
And you'll get an instinct for what needs to be done, humanly speaking.
Yeah.
You'll just have a hunch.
Uh-huh.
You'll have an intuition. And you just move with it. Oh, okay, this should be over there, fine.
So when
not as if I put this over there, magic's going to happen. Because
right,
that's not the point.
Right. And then when it doesn't, see, it didn't work.
Yeah.
Because it's a recipe and those usually break down, right?
Yep.
So what are the beliefs that are so right there in our face living, that you hear from people and that you experience, that unwittingly hold us in the belief in the lack. They hold us hostage in our life, in our sense of fulfillment, in our sense of wealth, in our sense of abundance.
It's
What are
all
those
tied.
common things that come up that you hear from people you work with?
I don't have enough money.
Mm-hmm.
I don't earn enough. I don't have a budget that will allow me to do that. I
Mm-hmm.
can't afford that. I've never been able to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'll never have enough money to go around the world.
Right.
I can't travel first class.
Right.
You
And
know,
so, and those
I
things
would
are
love to go on a cruise with my friends, but I could never afford a cruise.
right. So those are the things that unwittingly hold us hostage,
Yep.
because we buy them like they're true.
And another one is I didn't get a college education, so I can't get a good enough job. You know, all of those limiting beliefs. My folks were poor, so I didn't have any opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
I'm thinking
don't
of,
know enough to get the promotion.
right. I'm thinking of the comment from your mouth to God's ear, about 6 inches,
Yeah.
right? Because when we buy that stuff about our living, we literally put ourselves into, almost like into a little jail cell. And that becomes our experience.
Well, you're in a box. That's right.
Yeah.
Yep.
And there's no freedom there. So
Yep.
the way out of that is
To begin to see who you are beyond what you look like to yourself. What's there? You know, when people say they know me,
mm-hmm.
they don't know me. They just know the thing that calls itself Betty. And they don't really know that. They just know what it looks
Right.
like.
Right.
And they know some of its habits, stuff like that.
Right.
But you're aware that there's a whole lot to you that nobody knows,
Mm-hmm.
and they never will. But you know. And when you start working with that of you that's not so picture perfect,
Mm-hmm.
it gives you a sense of the power and the strength that's there that you can call on if you will.
Right.
And that's when Kim talks about willingness.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think, I've been reading this book called The Psychology of Money.
Yeah.
And it's been really good. It has short little chapters. One of the things that I thought was interesting is it has a couple different things. It's a lot that's interesting. I don't have it right here next to me, unfortunately. So, but one of the things is the sense of what's enough. That's one of the things. The other thing,
And that usually means everything.
right?
Enough.
But it's not. So when you look at wealth, when you look at money, the thing that's interesting is, and what the perception is, it really gets you thinking is, what does it take for it to be enough for you in your living? But then the flip side is that when you look at people, very few people care what other people own, but then they think they need to own it because that'll show how accomplished they are. When people really care about your humanity and who you be as a person more than any car or bauble that you might own, any possession that you might have. So the thing that they looked at was wealth, defined in this book that you start to play with, is being able to do what I want, when I want to do it, for as long as I want to do it, without being worried.
You want to say that again?
So being able to do what you want, when you want to do it, for as long as you want to do it, with whoever you want to do that with, without the fear that that you're not going to have enough, that you won't be able to do it. So in other words, if you have a job, 9 to 5 job, you have to be at your job from 9 to 5. So you can't just, let's go have a swim party. It's like, no, I don't think so. Maybe on Saturday or maybe the weekend, right? So this whole idea of wealth defined as freedom to do what I want, when I want to do it, with who I want to do it.
Well, it's the freedom for choice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of interesting. The other thing was that we seem to get into this comparison, or we seem to think that there's these hard and fast rules around financial stuff. And at best, it's a game where everything is in flux. It's more like poker than chess. Right? And so there's a book that I'm also reading right now that's really good called Thinking in Bets by this gal named Annie Duke, who is a professional poker player and a champion and all that. But the whole book is about making smarter decisions when you don't have all the facts. Because in life, in our human living, we think we have all the facts. And we don't. We don't ever allow for anything beyond that. In the human, I know this is all in the human picture, but it's like the fact that's generative is the divinity that shapes our ends. But you have to be open. If you're going to try and control it and predict it and all of that, that's up in the air. Maybe so, maybe not.
Well, there is this, I would call it a fact, that in my daily living, what Betty gets into and how she goes about it and what it includes are all the ingredients for Betty to discover that her divinity shapes her humanity, and not the other way around, unless she says so.
Right.
If I say that's going to shape my world, that gives me a world, and I may not be happy with it, but that's what gives it to me.
Right.
When I'm willing to look at the possibility that there's a whole lot more available than that, then my world begins to expand a little bit. And I say, oh, yeah, I can do that. Oh. And then I open up a little more and, oh. There's no limit to what's possible when you learn to be yourself with a capital S, instead of the picture of you.
Yeah. Yeah. And that brings us to the quote from Miscellaneous Writings of Mary Baker Eddy that says, "This mind is the divine intelligence, holding man as a living witness to and perpetual idea of inexhaustible good." Yeah. Which is another way to say what you just did say, I think.
Okay, it's hard to find references, but I like to give you something that you can go back to and leaf through and mull over and so on. But what we really want you to begin to look at, or what scientific metaphysics offers anyway, as a possibility, is that we do live and move and have being mentally. And mind is not in the seen, heard, felt realm. Consciousness is not in the seen, heard, felt realm. Mind and consciousness and truth and love and spirit, none of those are things I can put my hand on and say, I got a handful of that.
Right.
But they are all the ingredients and the constitutional stuff that makes me real. And when I can reach for that, then Betty shows up just fine. I don't have to fuss with her.
Right.
And stuff occurs, but the answers are right there.
Yeah.
You know, one of the things that I've said many, many times, and you probably heard it, but solutions are what generate problems. Solutions demanding to be recognized. If you don't recognize them, a problem is going to show up. And when you solve that, you see the fact. And it's like, oh boy, now we can move on. She got that one. So then another problem comes up. And instead of a whole lot of life is one problem after another, it's one solution showing up after another. Right. So that I'm freer and freer and freer. And on I go.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, very good.
We'll talk about money again, and we will.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's all good stuff. So at any rate, let's see. Oh, what time does this start? We got a comment. What time does this start? We've been looking for this for half an hour. We start at 7 p.m. Central Time, 5 p.m. Pacific Time, both on YouTube and Facebook at the Institute of Metaphysical Science Facebook page, or on YouTube on our Rethink Life. And you can go to scientificmetaphysics.org/YouTube, and you'll go right to that page and you can see the scheduled one coming up, and you can watch right from there. So either way, that's where it is. And if you can go to our YouTube channel and you can hit subscribe, right on, that would be great. We love that. All right. And then you'll get notifications from YouTube. So that's when we'll be. So we'll see you guys next week at the same time, 7 p.m. Central, 5 p.m. Pacific. And until then, let abundance be your guide. Play. Let's see what you create. All right. We'll see you next week.
Bye-bye.